Our topic of this month is based on your article that you co-wrote with Jody Ann, and it's on imposter syndrome. And I was sharing with you earlier, Ruchika, that even though Gabby and I, and many of us, by the way, in this room, are doing things, have read books about the myth of imposter syndrome, about the systems that enable that self-doubt in us. Um, we know all of it, right? And we know that we are very much capable. We know that we've gotten to the places that we are now because of who we are and what we're capable of. Yet, yet we internalize this imposter syndrome. I mean, even myself, I was sharing the story, everyone, with Ruchika, that how long have we been to invest, right? Now almost for 2 years. And even before that, most of you know that I invest in women-led companies, and I believe in everything we're talking about. And right now I'm in the process of raising a fund to invest in women-led companies because I believe in it so much. Yet I still feel like an imposter. I still feel like I have to prove myself once over and over again. I still feel inadequate. I still feel like maybe I shouldn't be doing this. How do we overcome it then? If we still know everything we need to know, and we've read everything we need to read, yet we still somehow figure out a way to internalize it, and we still overcome, but we still very much have that sense of inadequacy within ourselves often.
It's such a good question and such a hard question. So I will say this, I think until we don't actually name what's going on, we are going to keep succumbing to those systems. And that is something that I was really hoping to do, definitely with my first book, The Diversity Advantage, which, it's like this small book. I wrote it, like I was like thinking, oh, I'll write this playbook that collates how companies and the data around why organizations need to invest in women, more around leadership rather than invest in women entrepreneurs, but essentially just, make that investment into women. And, if I write this playbook and I collate all the research, like leaders are going to read it and be like, yes, definitely. Let's go and invest in women. Let's create a women's leadership program where we both support women as well as educate men and other people in positions of privilege and power about bias, and everything's going to work out great. Guess what happened? Most of the people who read the book identified only as women. Most of the people who were interested or actually connecting with me were women in middle management or even lower roles, saying, thank you for naming this. Now what? Like, how do I move beyond this, right? And then when I would try and connect with male leaders or with people with other positions of privilege and power, including successful women, a lot of what I'd hear was like, oh, this book is cute. Like, no thanks, not interested. So for me, it was a bit of a big shock, because I always thought, oh, well, again, very naive, I guess, but I always thought, oh, people want to do the right thing. They just don't know how. And if I create this book, like that'll show them how to do it. And first book talked about, like, similar to what inclusion and purpose, which of course I expanded a lot more, but what does inclusive hiring guidelines look like? What does it mean to look at pay equality? What does it mean to sponsor women, not just mentor women, but sponsor women, which all this research had existed for a while. And I think what the mistake I made, and the mistake that I am learning from and that I'm hoping to do different this time, is to also equip women with the language to name, hey, this is what's happening to me right now. Because I didn't have that when I was going through a more corporate career, right? I didn't have the language to name, like, hey, as a journalist, if I have a breaking news story, was back in the day when you used to work for newspapers mostly, and if I have a breaking news story, why does my male colleague's breaking news story get the first page? And that was because my editors didn't want to hurt his feelings or his ego, right? His story was less important than mine. but mine was put on page 3, which for anyone in journalism, it's like a really big deal, right? You live for these breaking news stories. And we all know in each and every industry, there are examples of what that really glamorous like opportunity is. And the reality is research shows that women don't get those opportunities as often as men. And people of color don't get those opportunities as often, those glamorous opportunities as white people. So there was that. And then, you know, in the technology industry, hey, like, why am I like, people are overlooking me, they're interrupting me, or my idea is even heard, or this guy got credit for something I said, or my idea. And again, not being able to name it and actually like say like this is what it is, I think that's what continues to feed into that feeling of like imposter and I don't belong and there's something wrong with me and I need to change. And I also want to say like these systems are really strong. The systems that were created to, I want to say oppress us for sure, and you know it might feel very extreme, but the systems that were created to keep women in their place, and unfortunately we're seeing it happen right now on a political level, but the systems that were created to keep us quote unquote in our place are really strong. You are swimming in waters where you were not supposed to thrive. And so what does it take to go beyond that, right? What does it take to find that inner strength to say, to really push back against these very, very strong systems, right? And so for me, some of those things are definitely being able to name them, because if you don't name them, if you can't identify and name them, both for yourself as well as when, you know, others come to you and they're like, hey, this is happening to me. That's something that I think the power of movements like the Me Too movement, like Black Lives Matter and the movement for racial justice in the workplace. First time ever in my life that I heard companies talk about violence against Asian women was last year, AAPI Women, when there were a spate of very, very public anti-Asian, unfortunately, hate crimes specifically against women. Before that, in all these years that I've been doing this work, I'd never heard anyone name it, right? So when you name it, that gives it power, right? And that gives you power because it tells you like, hey, this is what's happening. It's not just me. I can overcome it. So that's the number one thing. Number two is, you know, I say this and I'm going to like say this until the end of this call, and then hopefully my voice won't reverberate in your dreams and nightmares tonight, but like really build your tribe, you know, and have people, again, it doesn't have to be your best friend, it doesn't have to be your mom, it doesn't have to be, you know, people who you've grown up with or like have always called your friends, like that has its place, right? But again, I love my mom, I'm super close to her. Until recently, she didn't work outside the home. So when I would come to her and I'd say, hey, you know, mom, I'm facing this issue, she'd say, well, guess what? You're so lucky you got this opportunity. You're living my dream. You're doing things that I could never imagine. Like, just power on. You'll be fine. You'll be fine. And so you building a tribe of people whom you can talk to, whom can really hold space for you. Again, they don't have to be your best friends at all. I think that is something that helps us overcome. But I will acknowledge it is really hard, and there are other ways, you know, rest and recovery, meditation, really taking time to step away when you need to, and investing in other areas of your life as well, whatever that is, relationships or exercise or dance or whatever it is for you. That I think is really important too.